Ladies and gentlemen, I see it's 4 o'clock, and we'd like to welcome you to Strauss and Company's regular running of our Zoom program. And today we're joined with some very special guests: Andrej Urbanski, Grose, Swinney, Beezy Bailey, and Caryn Scrimgeour. These artists have been very kindly participated in the various charity lots on our sale through lots 7, 8, 9, and 10. Today we're going to talk a little bit about those charities and as well as hearing from the artists about some of their work and yeah, how it relates to their practice. I suppose today, you know, your work is on the Clarke's Bar and Dining Room charity sessions. I saw a post, you know, well, I've seen many posts on various social medias that have included your photographs that, you know, in and around Clarke's through the years that I've known you. Especially the way that the light streams through that window. I suppose your work, Late Night, Lastnight, Lukhanyo, really captures that kind of spirit in various ways. Won't you just give us a little bit of background as to, before we talk about the how of your subject, can you tell us who your subject is here?
So that's Lukhanyo, who any patron of Clarke's will recognize as the friendliest waiter in the world.
He was also a manager for a while, wasn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been there for a long time. Yeah. Although now he's not working there anymore, I don't think. But yeah, I met him just through going and having the breakfast special thousands of times in the morning. Yeah.
I mean, Ian, it's quite interesting because your subjects and in these still lives have been these people that you've met and encountered, and they carry quite a stillness to them. I mean, how do you find that the ability to strike a relationship with somebody where you can catch them in this sort of moment of stillness, or is it by virtue quite a quick process?
No, it's relatively quick, but these portraits are generally made in one sitting with the subject. It's a grueling task for them and for me. And when I ask them if they're happy to sit, I never really, I always kind of think in the middle of the painting that I really should have warned them more how difficult it is and how sort of painful it is to sit in one position for 3 hours. But yeah, that's what happened. Lukhanyo was at least sitting on the couch, so he wasn't too uncomfortable.
I suppose that in this picture, you know, I remember seeing recently your submissions for that were on. I think it was when you won the Absa Atelier, which was in 2011. Yeah, I was thinking back to the seeing those works in Johannesburg, and you know, the effect. I think Beezy's comment earlier was insightful about the kind of chiaroscuro, and especially, I suppose, in the pose that you're sitting in now, it kind of fits really. It's instructive because back then those works were, I think they were had gone through the various shades of spectrum of the spectrum, and you had rendered these sort of empty sort of internal landscapes. It's interesting to me the way that your work has, you know, been attentive to that kind of light, and you know, in the early work, the figure now comes to people these landscapes, and the attention of the light has moved away, I suppose, from the environment onto how you render it in the figure. Would you agree?
Say again, sorry.
Would you agree? Do you think do you think
Yeah. Well, you know what? I actually used the light with these pictures of people just to make the rendering of them a lot easier. I just prefer usually quite a hard shadow because it's just all about like rendering someone's face. If you try and focus on like drawing the eyes and the nose and the mouth, it just always looks bad. Whereas if you focus on areas of light and shadow, it's sort of very unfamiliar shapes that then seem to sort of like express that person's personality a lot more. So it's quite a sort of pragmatic decision on my part. As I was saying, they're kind of done in one go, and it either works or it doesn't. And by the end of 3 hours, that's as long as someone can sit still at a time. So they're sick of me, I'm sick of them, and then we have to kind of call it a day.
Do you spend a lot of time Do you spend a lot of time lighting the subject to make sure that it's right before you
Yeah. A lot of the time, I spend more time moving furniture and moving things around my studio with this person, more time doing that than actually painting. Which is, I mean, with Lukhanyo, for instance, I'd never hung out with him. I wouldn't say we were friends. I just knew him because he was a waiter. I mean, interestingly, after I did this painting of him, we became friends, and then in fact lived together for 2 years. So this was the sort of this was the genesis of our friendship. But yeah, in that situation, if there's a stranger, I don't really know them, they don't really know me. It can be quite hard to sort of find a comfortable situation for both of us that also feels like it can result in a good picture.
And how many of your subjects, interestingly, I suppose, in the process, you sort of make friends. How many of your subjects have you returned to? I mean, you said, people are like, they're sick of me, I'm sick of them.
Does it
happen again?
Now and again, I'm come across a masochist and they're willing to go another round. I mean, some of my close friends I've just kind of painted because they've been around for a couple of years. But mostly it's just one. Yeah, mostly people are quite tired, and it's I don't know. It's just this almost arbitrary constraint that I invented just to give kind of shape and meaning to the whole project.
Lastly, I think it's just because it struck our catalogers when we came in, because I suppose the tactility. This work is relatively small, 36 by 30. It's got a real sort of notion of a physical object, and I noticed that it's and correct us if we're wrong, but it's paper laid down on canvas, which is then stretched over board. Am I right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, your surfaces in your application is quite striking. What made you decide on that kind of sort of physical construction of
It's quite a simple answer. It's just I really enjoy painting on sized paper a lot of the time, but I really hate it when paintings are behind glass. Well, I don't really hate it, but I would prefer to avoid putting them behind glass. So I just started mounting them on these sort of linen boards that I would make, which feels a lot like reinventing the wheel, but they come out as, they sort of look like slightly unique objects. I absolutely couldn't imagine making a painting like that on a sort of pre-made small canvas, bought from Decollage or something. for whatever reason.
I think it's important to note that there is a white frame around the work as well, which is and so Ian, thanks very much. That was it was really cool to sort of find the story behind it, because I think your portraits that I've seen recently are so enigmatic, and there's I think it's a perfect way to start the Clarke's charity lot. Moving on. Oopsie, sorry. I must find my cursor. Moving on to Rubes. Hi, Ruby.
Sorry, I need to unmute myself.
There
Hello.
you go. Hi, how's it?
Good.
So Ruby, this is quite an important work, because I suppose this is what was the work that was commissioned and sold as a Zeitz print off your recent show that coincided with the that I think it was in the second group of shows of the museum's opening. Just before we get into the actual print, can you tell us a little bit about that show and really how it sets the tone for, because the show I remember seeing was amazingly delicate and used very few used, I suppose, a bunch of very limited palettes, I suppose, and done on tracing paper, which gives it a wonderful sort of illumination and sort of this ephemeral illumination in that space. And I think this print really translates the feeling of that show quite nicely. So I suppose just if you can talk to us a little bit about that show and the process of making the print.
Sure. So the Zeitz marker bought my graduate show when I finished at Michaelis in 2015. So a lot of the paintings that I did in the first room were from my graduate show. And they subsequently commissioned me to do 4 larger works that were going to be shown in the museum. And those were in, I think, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th room in the Zeitz marker. So the show was the whole of the 4th floor. At the Zeitz. And it was curated by Julia Kabat, who was actually part of my year at Michaelis. And she divided the rooms into different themes. And my palette, I generally work with transparent color. So I think that's mainly so that I can get the translucency of the tracing paper and the silk canvas, which I now started working on.
It's quite interesting to be looking at the screen prints, and I think what a lot of people don't realize about screen prints is actually this is quite a complex. This is not just one layer. I think it's there's, if you look through, there's various sort of gradations of the color, which I think why I said earlier that this communicates that sort of illumination that the show sort of held, is because precisely of this kind of reduction screen print that you've used here. Was that deliberate?
So I had done screen prints before, but I actually found it very challenging, this idea of, even though it is quite similar to the way that I paint, where I paint quite reductively, I don't ever use white in my work. So it was just very strange because you have to paint with black pigment, like a touche. So when you're doing the incredibly light layer, you're painting with like a very solid black. So it was quite a challenge. This has got, I think, 7 layers to it. It was quite a challenge, but I did the print with Black River Studios and they were amazing. They really helped a lot. So it was interesting to see the translation of also printing onto obviously an opaque surface where I normally work on a transparent surface, and trying to get that luminosity through. So all the pigments that we used were actually transparent pigments. So yeah, I think it came out quite well.
Yeah. And Ruth, just you know, we've got to move on to some of we've got artists waiting in the wings, but I wanted to ask just with Clarke's, tell me a little bit about your relationship with the place and the institution. I know it carries quite a special spot in a certain scene's heart.
Yeah, I've been going to Clarke's for many years now, and I have my birthday there every year. And the same as Ian, I think I actually probably got to know Ian probably through the breakfast special every morning. Yeah, so Clarke's is an institution where, you know, they always make you feel as part of the family. So I was terrified that they would close down. So I'm glad that I have the opportunity to donate something towards it.
And sorry, there was another question just before we move on to the Dassenberg, but I wanted to ask, Ian, was I right in, Ruby, have you ever sat for Ian?
No, me and my brother were going to, but unfortunately.
Oh yeah, that was supposed to happen. Huh.
Yeah.
I'll catch you.
Yeah, happily.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Ian and Ruby. That was really nice. And I suppose, you know, one of the reasons why we love having artists on, and we so really do as an auction house, but you know, it's an opportunity to actually ask about the physical, material nature of your objects, and I think, you know, and how they relate to the broader practice. So I think you know, you both really gave a lot of insight into your contributions. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
So Charles, I see you've joined us with your camera on. Hi. Just let me introduce quickly Charles Shields. We're here to now talk about some of the contributions to generous contributions by artists to the Dassenberg Horse and Dog Rescue Center, which I believe is outside Atlantis. And I suppose this is also a cause that has a special place in my heart, having five canine buddies that we share our home with, 4 being rescues. And so Dassenberg is, I think Charles, when we were discussing the contributions, Charles said that I think it costs about 4,000 Rand a month to feed a horse, and Dassenberg have quite a few that they look after. Charles, can you give us a little bit of paint the scene a little bit before we talk to some of the artists about who and what Dassenberg is?
Sure, Matthew. Well, I mean, to be fair, I knew nothing of them until about a month ago, about 2 months ago, when I started talking to you about it. And for me, it sort of epitomized the COVID-19 situation, where a friend and client of mine, who almost single-handedly has held this center up for the last year, said to me that due to the virus, you know, people had lost their jobs and could no longer afford to feed their animals, and so horses and dogs were being dumped, you know, by the day, and they were swamped. And I suppose, you know, there are so many things, you know, so many people and things in need of help, but I suppose what really moved me about it was that these are not creatures that can perhaps speak for themselves in a sense, and also that it's right next to Atlantis, and the center have partnered with Underdog to help particularly young women in traumatic situations, to sort of help them reconnect, you know, almost to get over kind of PTSD. I mean, horses apparently have a remarkable ability in helping young humans who've been through trauma kind of reconnect with themselves. So for me, it was just a very sort of evocative representation of the time that we'd lived through, and this little, you know, microcosm of what was going on in the world as a sort of nuclear fallout of the situation. but you know, so we spoke to a number of our, in fact, we put it out to all our artists who are getting hit on all the time for donations. And I just really want to thank, you know, those who did come to the table. I mean, there was no pressure from our side, but all of them came because they're animal lovers and wanted to do something. So, you know, it's remarkable. I mean, it's basically like asking someone to donate a month's salary, really, is kind of what these artists have done to a certain extent. So just want to say thanks, and thanks to you guys at Strauss as well for, you know, making this possible. I mean, you know, it was effortless. So let's hope that people get out there and bid aggressively.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. Yeah.
So I think we just for our audience, I think the auction closes at 8 o'clock on Monday evening. So please do get onto our website, and we'll discuss the details of how you can bid later. But I suppose one of the lots that goes for me really to the heart of the Dassenberg and these donations is Daniel Naude's Afrikaner dog in Maritzburg, South Africa, 7th February 2009. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us today. And, you know, as I said earlier, we've got 5 K9 buddies, 4 are rescues, and of those 4, two are Afrikaners, and they are, I suppose, the most, well, the one gets younger every day, and he's quite a terrorist, and they barely stay still. You know, which is for a photographer must be quite a challenge in terms of subject matter.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you. You know, when Charles approached me or phoned me and said, "Listen, we've got this Dassenberg, you know, donation for the auction coming up," I said, "Listen, this is a perfect opportunity for me to, you know, donate one of these dog portraits." As you say, you know, these dogs are quite skittish and just some is quite very feral and wild. It's quite a while ago. You can see the portrait was taken about, I mean, what is that, more than 10 years ago? I must have said I was a bit fitter then. I was photographing still with all film with a Hasselblad camera. And this series, the Afrikaners portraits, was kind of the, how should I say, my first body of work that introduced me into the art world. You know, it was such a journey for me. It took about approximately 3 to 4 years to get about 18 portraits together. If I think back, you know, traveling alone and figuring out where I'm going to go next, it was quite an adventure then.
Mm. I mean, you know, just seeing this, you know, I'm always drawn with photography. I remember being in a walkabout with David Goldblatt, and he was a big proponent of opening the shutter as wide as possible to get, as he liked to call it, infinity in between the rocks and the stones in the foreground, and you could follow them on forever. You've taken quite a different approach here, if we look at the sort of the structural composition of your photograph, with this quite beautiful but very shallow depth of field, which you can notice just in the, you know, if you start looking at this chap's paws, and you know, it's almost like the paws are in focus, and there's this, you know, maybe 15-20 centimeter sort of range that you've got that almost sort of has caught a halo in this composition. What is your thinking when you go and compose a picture like this? I mean, it's obviously very deliberate, but you know, did you approach the subject, your subject matter with a kind of idea or form, or did, you know, knowing your equipment, did you know, settle upon this way of taking a photograph as you were going in the field? Because as you said, sort of 18 portraits over sort of 3 years, you're looking at, you know, maybe about 4 or 5 a year. You know, yeah.
I would say I was very critical in my selection. I used to travel a lot in certain regions of South Africa, and the Karoo. As you know, the Karoo light is very hard. When the sun is up, it's up. There's only about 3 or 4 months where you can have very nice soft light. For me, it was about the encounter, you know, that really engagement with the dog. So I would travel and then see a dog in that area, and then I would leave my place where I sleep at, say, about 4 in the morning, and then hopefully I'll get the dog in the area and then approach it very slowly and then take the portrait with f-stop, say 5.6. All my other works was kind of a side profile, a very taxonomical profile. This work is right from in front. It was very intense. It's always about this reciprocal moment between me and the dog. And as you mentioned, if you look at the paws, I think the print is just big enough to see also the Karoo bossies and the grasses on the right side. And I also always aimed for this real calmness and stillness, not just in light, but in the animals as well. So if you look at all my previous works and all my works, you'll see the eyes are open, the mouth are closed. Sometimes you'll see all the legs. So it was for me really achieving the stillness. In further, there's, you know, the whole conceptual story about the Afrikaner dog that's crossbred and much stronger, and it leads to our big South African diversity and complex we have in our country. But I mean, I'm a big dog person, and this one I selected specifically for this show at Everard Reed, and I'm happy to put it up for auction. So the works are fine selected when I selected my portraits, my dog portraits.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, I must just say also from, you know, if we think that a dog is, you know, just under a meter tall, well, under about 600 centimeters tall, you must have been on the ground when you took this shot, virtually.
Yeah, luckily the old film Hasselblads had top viewfinders. So yeah. I kind of just bend my back about perfect 90 degrees and then just look from the top in. So it made it a little bit easier from just aiming from in front. So I managed to get a very low perspective, yes.
I suppose it gives a certain amount of humility in your approach. Must make it a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, I think, Matthew, as well. The dogs were just the last thing. You know, I really tried to portray all the Animal Afrikaner series as praise and something that's really, you know, like a crossbred dog that's down there. That's why going down quite low gave them this statue-like sense.
No, it's something remarkable, I suppose, about the, you know, that if you think about these dogs and if you think about, you know, sort of as you'd look out the window when you're driving through these areas, you know, and they're always moving. So it is a remarkable stillness that you've acquired. And personally, I think, you know, I'm a very big fan of film, and I think you can see and taste film in your work. So it's, yeah, thanks. It's really, really, really fantastic. And, you know, having seen this in person, it is a small print, but those details really are quite exquisite and exceptional. And I think it's important to know that it was taken on film in this digital era. So it really emphasizes the medium. Yeah. Daniel, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
And Andrej, are you here with us? It's just, see, I think you might have to just unmute yourself. I'm just gonna...
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, how are you?
I'm fine. Can you see me?
No, not quite yet.
No.
Oh, yes, yeah, there you are, yeah. Hi, how are you?
How are you? Fine, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. Andrej, listen, your reception's a little bit bad, but we're just going to quickly, I just wanted to quickly talk about this work in terms of, I think it's quite nice, the sort of conscious distinction between, we were talking about light earlier, and your works for me have always been about, and I think we've discussed this before, about like that kind of effect of looking through a kind of kaleidoscope and all of the different ways that you can reach color and that you can reach white as well, with these, I suppose, films on the top. Talk to us a little bit about what we're looking at, you know, when we're looking at these sort of overlapping fields of color. I mean, how do you begin to conceptualize, again, these gradations of these fields that you overlap?
Yeah, I work currently with dark blues, dark greens, and blacks, and different nuances of that in the backgrounds to make the works pop a little bit more from the background, especially when they're not filling like the background, like this work. And I concentrate on colors that are sometimes very odd to each other. They are not actually working with each other, but I try to find a way to make them work. So for example, here we have this kind of like dirty pink on the left corner, overlapping into like a dark blue and into the red. And that dirty pink is not a very familiar color, but the red is a very, very popular color. And then you have all those different tones of blue, which is one group of the grading of the blue. And with that, I'm playing around with that, basically.
Mm-hmm. Because it's also not, you know, I suppose there's that immediate relationship between it's not only color, but it's also surface. You know, so, you know, I suppose there's that thing of you know, it's surface and edge quality, I suppose, application. So that's, I suppose, part of the magic is this kind of your finish.
Yeah, so I'm working with a lot of different finishes actually. In this work, you have around 4 to 5 different finishes, different matte colors, different shiny and gloss colors. The background is actually in that work semi-gloss, and some of the colors in the middle, the light turquoises, are very matte. And for me, it's always an interesting thing to be able to kind of have a mirror effect or light effect in the painting, in addition to the transparency that you see, and sometimes take away from that to make it completely matte color, to take away the glossy effect, and play with and trick the viewer's perception by taking away those that evident shade that is following, for example, in one color, and then trick the viewer by adding a side color which is completely matte or glossy, or sometimes it's I work with spray paints and acrylics, and they have completely different surfaces in terms of thickness and application. The application ways, especially the drying times between all those different materials, are very, very different and very, very tricky also.
I mean, you know, it might be a silly question, but do you ever mess any up? I mean, is there, or can they be rescued?
Yeah, you mean if I mess up in the painting? Sorry, I didn't hear that proper.
Yeah, I mean, do you allow for?
I allow for human flaw. It's basically a digital appearing work that is 100% handmade. Reflecting in the topic on the digital technology that is surrounding us. And obviously, in the end, if you approach the painting very, very close up, you can see the human flaw. But it's actually about that topic, to be the imperfection in the human.
No, I mean, I suppose that's what, you know, the kind of relationships I find between color are you know, as you said, are quite you know, that's what the work is about. But I find it allows itself to be communicated through this, you know, kind of precision that the work presents. Andrej, sorry, the one more thing I also wanted to bring up was this is quite unique in that you've started more recently, because the works I've seen like this have been generally done on a like the size behind you. What's kind of driven? What's the difference, I suppose, between what you can find you can communicate on a smaller canvas versus the bigger ones? Do you find there's different things that happen on smaller scale?
Yes, for me, smaller scales are always a little bit more difficult to paint because a lot of the forms and shapes are much smaller, so you have to be much more delicate, and the application is much more difficult of the paint. My work is very much about drying time, application, avoiding the flaw, avoiding the human error, and creating a unique and flawless work. And it's definitely more challenging than the bigger work, and it's very difficult to hide those flaws in a much smaller work than in a bigger one, because especially also in a medium frequency than a high frequency like behind me, because in a high frequency there's much more to access and to see than in a work that is not that busy.
Yeah, no, but I wanted to ask because it's I've seen the smaller one, and it is incredibly effective, and almost, you know, I was sort of struck between the difference. I don't know which ones I prefer, the smaller ones or the bigger ones. Now that I've seen this one, it's really, you know, and quite a mesmerizing work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrej. And then I think we're going to just be moving on to Caryn. Are you with us? Caryn Scrimgeour. Hi, Caryn.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely. Got you there. I suppose, Caryn, one of the sort of themes that we've been talking about today, you know, not deliberately, is I suppose surface, really. And your works capture the relationship of objects and their surfaces. So also present a different kind of magic. You know, I suppose also deeply indebted to light as well, and shadow, as we've seen, as we've seen again today. You know, for me, when I first saw them, I was struck by the Oriental influence in them. Has that always been a point of departure for you?
Yeah, I think ever since I've started painting, it has been a very sort of strong theme in my work. I don't do it intentionally. It's just what I'm drawn to. I've got a particular sort of favorite objects that I paint repeatedly. And the one is a little tea bowl that I discovered wrapped up in a box in the kitchen cupboard one day when I was about 7. And I think that was where my fascination started with Oriental objects. It's, you know, it's definitely not intentional, but I'm completely drawn to them. So it's.
I mean, you know, what's been fun, because I've seen quite a few of your works now across sort of different periods, and for each one, it's almost like a game that, you know, the viewer is invited to sort of enter into this sort of top view world and begin to, you know, decode all of these various elements that exist. There's a wonderful sense of narrative that your works catch. Is it, I mean, you know, I suppose the virtue of having artists on is, you know, we can ask, well, you know, is it like that for you when you come to the construction of them, or you know, or is it a sheer random arrangement of objects that you sort of?
No, it's definitely not random. It's like writing a poem where you know, it has to make sense, but it's not necessarily going to make sense to somebody else. They almost unravel it and try and decode it, as you say. And the meaning is going to be different for everybody who looks at it, because the associations of the objects are different for everybody. You know, for me, the meaning might be one thing, but somebody else will see something else in it because of their links to the objects or their relationships. But it's, you know, I never plan a painting completely to start with. I will just start and it literally unfolds, and, you know, you paint one object, which then sets up a whole dialogue that you have to respond to with other objects. So for me, it's almost like the objects become a language for what I'm trying to say, and you basically writing a poem or a short story.
One of my favorite sort of moments in your painting, just because I recognize the bottle, was the Lefroy bottle.
Oh, yeah. That one, yeah, I must have had a bit much of it because I painted the whole thing, then I realized I'd left the R out of the Lefroy on it, so I had to repaint the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, because I suppose they've got these they've got these moments of, I suppose one of my sort of fascinations is the biographies that these objects present, and their own sort of contained and concealed narratives, and then when they come into contact with each other, they the sort of extended stories that they can tell are so much more. Caryn, your choice of color, is that sort of deliberate at the same time? Does that sort of set the tone to the chapters of these stories, or is that sort of more of an aesthetic decision on the type of day or the impact that you want to paint?
Yeah, I mean, for me, usually the starting point of a painting is the color. Is that I really pretty much am in the mood for painting a certain color, or I might have just got a new tube of paint and I just can't wait to use it. So the color is very important, and for 90% of my paintings, the color is the starting point, and everything else comes from that color, the patterning, what goes on it. Occasionally I'll get a more, it'll be an object that actually starts it and then dictates the color. But usually it's the color, and that is purely a thing of what color do I feel like painting. And I mean, I absolutely love paint, so I just can't, I can't get enough of different paint colors. So I will, I'm always looking at tubes of paint, and I wake up in the middle of the night and think of a tube of paint and have to painting that color. So color is very important to me.
So what are your colors for the season?
Apparently pink. I have 5 pairs of pink overalls, so it's hard to get away from that. But
so those are your overalls you've got on. Okay.
Overalls, yeah. It's not a
Oh, cool.
And that's all I wear. So.
Your colors for the season, right? Okay.
Yeah. No, well, probably for my life, let alone the season. Yeah.
All right, Caryn, thank you so much. And it was, as I said, it's lovely to meet you. We've never met before, but I've always admired these stories. It's I'd love to take it further when we meet again soon. Moving on, Beezy, are you with us?
I am.
Hi, how are you?
Good, yourself?
Good, thanks. Beezy, just maybe you can bring the mic a little bit closer to you so we can. There we are. Yeah. Beezy, you're involved, I suppose, in a bunch of different sessions in this online sale. But this one is on the Dassenberg charity session, and this is Lady of the Flowers. Before we get on to the Quartet of Peace, this is quite an exceptional scale work print in both scale and intricacy. We've been talking about surface this evening, and like Caryn's use of pattern. So you make use of the same kind of overlaying of pattern. As this is kind of a general theme in your work, isn't it?
Yes and no. Certainly, I think with the prints and the combination of prints with paintings, there would be layers. Yes.
Beezy, will you talk to us a little bit about and the color screen prints? I mean, are you running these screen prints from your studio?
Yeah, so it's quite varied, but I mean, I do traditional edition silk screen work, which are more conventional. And then I have over the years been printing silk screens onto canvases, combining them with oil paint, which we were doing this morning, in fact. And in this particular case, this is printed, it hasn't been editioned as such, The scale, as you say, is exceptional. It's in a very large scale. In fact, it's on 2 sheets of paper, which I've joined in the center. And to achieve the image, I mean, if you look carefully, obviously it's a repeat print of the flower. I was actually at a friend's house in Wales in the summer last year, and I was so taken by the hedge of flowers and the contrasts, and I'm quite often looking for material to put onto silk screens in terms of the blacks or the chiaroscuro again coming out, and I noticed the deep dark colors and the bright colors in the foreground of the flowers, that I used my iPhone to snap it, and that's basically where the flowers came from, is from the photograph that I took of them. The image of the Madonna and child, the mother and child, is straight from Da Vinci, who I have used in my work before. And it was a kind of interesting rendition or transformation, whatever you want to say, using that and printing it in red. There was something quite striking. And of course, they married. And what I do with all my work is I'm constantly experimenting and taking chances and relying on mistakes. This was a more successful mistake.
Wonderful. Beezy, I could talk about work all day, but I think we've got some other lots to get through. So, Beezy, as we were saying, you've been also involved in the Quartet of Peace charity, which is a scholarship that will benefit 3 young South African classical musicians that are awarded a scholarship to go and a study at the ARCO project at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire. And these are the examples of them. These are the 3 recent recipients. We've got 2 cellists and a violinist. And I see Jordan Brooks on the violin was recently at the Cheetham School in Manchester, whereas Cameglo Maraba and Sifiso Mambata. Cameglo was at the Birmingham Conservatoire, while Sifiso Mambata was studying at the Purchell School in Herefordshire. Beezy, I think this is a charity that's quite close to your heart, is it not?
It is, yes. My sister's a world-class cellist, I'm proud to say, and my mother's a very good pianist, and they're both, musical, especially my mother's very much part of, well, her, I was going to say part of her life. so it was a privilege to be involved with helping with this fantastic cause.
And Beezy, I suppose we chose to include your work first up, Standing Heaven, the Quartet of Peace, sort of so well named. Could you talk us also again quite a large work? Sorry, this is one of our latest edition. Let's make their presence felt. I suppose could you talk us through this work, sort of the ascension that we see, or I suppose en route in the ascension. Have biblical themes have been a part of your work since the 80s? Am I wrong?
I think they've been a part of my work since I was 8, and they're not necessarily biblical in the traditional sense, more than kind of spiritual. I see them as, or certainly I'm fascinated by the angelic or the transcendental nature of humanity. So in this particular case, this is another of my angel paintings. You could say it's a theme that, as you say, that has come through my work throughout the years. It's ironic that it links up with the Quartet of Peace, because I don't work with preconcepts. I wouldn't have done this to illustrate the Quartet of Peace or anything to do with it in that sense. But it works very well in the fact that there are 4 angels helps in terms of the quartet. That is actually more coincidence than intent. But yeah, so it's very nice that, when I work on several paintings at the same time. I do not specifically plan them. A lot of them do work, in spite of what I say, with a certain theme. And this seemed to click in very well with what it's about.
Fantastic. Beezy, this is, I wanted to also talk to you about this work just before we move on, because this is part of the general the general sale, and this is Cat and Heels, which is now also, I suppose, cats have been like I think you share a sort of a familiarity with Gassner and William Kentridge for their proliferation of cats. We were talking about dogs earlier. You know, it's good to give the feline species. Do you have cats at home?
We do. I know we've got one. Yeah, we've got one at the moment who's very much part of our lives. And cats, ironically, have been very much part of my mother's life as well as music. So we've always grown up with cats, and I find them fascinating and beautiful to draw. And so this is more of a kind of it's less of a kind of portrait of a cat, but certainly of the theme of the cat, and it, as I say, crops up in my work throughout the years. And this particular one's got high heels in its front legs, which is also a theme that crops up in my work on an ongoing basis. This is specifically is a sugar lift etching, which lends itself to spontaneous expression when you're working on a plate, and with the gold leaf in the background as a kind of sky.
Would you have applied that gold leaf afterwards?
Yes, that was applied afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. So I think a cat in the town could be another title for the work. Beezy, thank you very much for your generous contributions to both these charities. Suppose you know, any wonderful works, I suppose, that really span various points of your making and practice. So yeah, I think it's a very, very insightful sort of overview of these quite nice moments in your oeuvre. So thanks very much.
Well, it's my pleasure.
And as soon as we've got you joining us, and then sorry, we've also Beezy, just last plug. We've also got
Woman for Peace.
Yes.
The Woman for Peace is actually, it's a picture I did on my balcony when I lived in the communal house and observatory in the 1980s. And it was one of those things I was talking today about figure drawing to a friend. And it was one of those things about Matisse and how he'd rework lines over and over again. It was one of those things that worked instantaneously, I'm delighted to say. And even all these years later, I'm still very proud of this print. And I will actually be putting on a T-shirt shortly on my new online shop that's about to be launched. So it's ironic that this has cropped up on your sale. I'm delighted to see Woman for Peace again.
Oh, well,
so it was a charcoal drawing, which I then translated into silkscreen, which is something I've done over the years. Yeah,
it's a wonderful way. I think you communicate the charcoal so beautifully through those gestural lines, and it's also a nice plug. So, Beezy, just a URL for your website. Is it? Can we find you at beezybailey.com?
It's when it's launched, it's going to be beezybaileyart.com, and I will make a huge song and dance about it. I'm sure you'll find it.
Thanks. Okay. Suze, we've got finally the last session 12 is still life photography, and I'm going to hand over to you just to talk us through these lights.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. We've actually got another session, which is the golf, which I'll also quickly talk about. I just want to say from our side, thank you to all these incredible artists for making these amazing donations, because it really is, it's very, very generous. And I know artists get asked a lot. So thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who's put these charity sessions together too. Still Life is a community photographic project, as you mentioned. It's been put together by a team behind the Turbine Art Fair, the R&B Turbine Art Fair, and they have collected 100 images by photographers documenting, or unprofessional photographers, I guess, Joe Soap in the street, capturing life as we've lived over the last few months. And they're very moving, and I think we can all identify with quite a number of the images. I particularly like the lot 694 to Bisa Moloy's work, which was an image of a jersey on a washing line, and how those basic tasks have also filled our days as we were all at home. So a very worthwhile cause, and really moving and very interesting. And those are the 25 of the finalists are on our website, and the rest of them are on the R&B Turbine website. So do go and see them. And then the last session, which is Golf RSA, which is a charity that was put together to help the community around the golfers, so the golf caddies and the vulnerable workers within the golfing community. We did a session for them a couple of months ago and it went incredibly well. I know that because we know him well, but there's a fabulous lot with Dan Nicol, who is a real character, and I'm sure some of you've seen him and met him at the Cape wine auction. But Dan has very generously given a lot to go and play golf with you, and I think you will find that probably one of the most amusing and well spent days, because your conversation will roll from golf to wine and wine to golf. There is also a great moment at the Drosty Hotel in Quartet, and of course, being the art community that there are some lovely things to see in Quartet. And finally, maybe just a plug for the as Alistair, our colleague, will adhere to, there's a moment to play golf with Jacques Kallis, which, as an unbelievably important cricketer and one that we are very proud of in this country, I'm sure his golf is probably just as mean as his cricket, but very well worth having a session on that. But anyway, those are the other charities that are on the sale, and amazing amount of contribution to charity, which I know is going to be greatly received by the various charities. Thanks, Matt.
So just, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to bring you to our website finally as we hit 5 o'clock. So to show everybody where you can come and bid and find the charity lots. This is, you'll come through to our online auctions page, and we are looking at the modern post-war and contemporary art, decorative arts and wine. We're ending on Monday evening at 8 o'clock. So please keep your eye on your lots. The lots that we've been registered to bid, you can do it all online. And if you are having any problems, please feel free to reach out to our colleagues in either our Joburg or Cape Town offices, and we can give you some assistance with registration. For the lots that we've been talking about today, just the quick way to find them is to go to our sessions tab, and you can start and you can find the lots in descending order at the end of the auction. So please go and have a look at those lots and register to bid. Otherwise, Mia, I'm going to hand over to you, and thank you very much, and good night, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you very much, Matthew. And I just wanted to say thank you very, very much to all the artists for not only joining us today. I mean, not only are they giving up their special time, but also giving up such wonderful works for these very important charities. And we really appreciate not only the donations, but for you to take this time on a Friday afternoon. We really appreciate it. So thank you again to all of the artists for joining us and everyone else. And we hope you will be sharing this video once it's on our YouTube channel. Please share it with friends, etc., so we can get the word out for these wonderful charities. But thank you again, everyone, and we hope you have a really nice weekend.
Good night.
And on that, I'll say goodbye. Thank you. Bye-bye.